Hello, welcome back if you've been around for a while, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, I thought I would share my adult coming out story, and for me that is just my coming out story in general because it was later in life, at least compared to how old I am right now. Before I get into it, I do want to put a little disclaimer in there and say, you know, coming out is a highly personal experience. There is no right or wrong way to do it. I am by no means trying to say the way I did it is right for everybody. And when I share opinions on it, I'm coming from a point of that was my opinion involving me, my life, my circumstances. I think everybody is different. There's a lot of factors that play into coming out, and everybody needs to make those decisions on their own. So I do want to emphasize that, particularly if somebody who's trying to come out is saying this. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The way I did it does not have to be right for you. Yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize that. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So as far as my coming out and what most people think is like traditionally coming out, in that like you let the people close to you know that you're with, you know, a member of the same sex, or if you're transgender, that's what you're going through, whatever these LGBTQI+ issues are, that coming out. I didn't do that until I lived here in Texas. I think it was probably spring of like 2013. Yeah, spring 2013. So at that point, I was already 29. Compared to how old I am now at 37, that is later in life. In the grand scheme of a life, it's not that late. But at the time, it seemed like I was coming out very late. And before I get into the how I came out, I thought I would go into the why it took me so long. And a big part of that is simply answered by the fact that I didn't know. You know, looking back at pictures and thinking back on experience in hindsight, it's kind of 2020. I think I would have known earlier in life had I grown up now with social media, the internet, a little bit more LGBTQI+ representation in movies, books, TV, songs, all of that. It would have been a little bit more in my face and a topic that I was forced to kind of grapple with and understand, versus when I grew up in the late 80s and 90s in the Midwest, no cable, didn't see a lot of movies. I mean, we were busy with sports and other activities. I grew up at a Catholic school. I was very small. I just didn't see or hear anything about being LGBTQIA+. If I don't say that every time, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get better about it. It just wasn't part of my growing up experience, and I don't think, you know, there was too much that could have been done to change that, particularly given the time and the area I grew up. The only exposure I really had was at school, learning about, you know, the word gay and homosexual, and luckily for me, it wasn't harped on at school very much. I know a lot of people with churches, and particularly the Catholic Church, have some really negative experience with those topics. For me, yes, it was talked about, but it was very briefly. They were much more focused on other things with us. So for me, in my experience, I'm very lucky in that way. Now, I did play soccer on boys' teams for a couple different reasons, but it was very common there for the boys to joke with other boys and kind of like put each other down by saying like, oh, you're so gay, or that's so gay. So I did sort of in the soup have that going on. I'd heard it used as derogatory, and more specifically, I'd only heard it used towards males and boys. I didn't really hear people talking about lesbians or, you know, females being gay, anything like that, so it just wasn't on my radar. Now, as you're moving up and I'm getting into like high school, I feel like Will and Grace was on TV around that time. I think I said already, we didn't have cable, so I wasn't seeing MTV and, you know, some of the channels where they might have been a little bit more ahead of the time with LGBT characters or individuals. We watched like Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman and Texas, Walker Texas Ranger and TGIF on ABC. So it wasn't a topic that I saw a lot in the media I consumed. Now, when I did see Will and Grace, I just didn't spend much time thinking about it, to be honest. And primarily in that show, again, it's male gay characters. Yes, I do think there were some episodes where there were lesbians or they talked about it. Obviously, Ellen had her show. All of this is going on, but again, it just wasn't on my radar. So all through high school, it just didn't cross my mind. I went to a very small high school. Again, I played on the boys' soccer team. a lot of the guys I was friends with and that my friends were attracted to, not all of them, but a lot of them played on the soccer team with me. And while I could sort of objectively understand why they were attractive or why the other girls were attracted to them, subjectively, I didn't necessarily feel that way. And at the time, I chalked it up to, one, I was too busy to have a boyfriend, which was true. I was super busy as a kid. And in high school, a lot of it was self-imposed. I was trying really hard to get a scholarship, and anyway. But two, I chalked it up to sort of being one of the guys. I saw them as friends and not necessarily brothers, but more in that vein as far as like my feelings toward them. So at the time I was just like, well, of course I'm not attracted to them. I'm around them all the time. I'm like a friend. They're my friends. Why would I be attracted to them? And other than that, in high school, I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. College, I think, again, I started to sort of question things more, but I still wasn't around a lot of people who were LGBTQI+, or who even really talked about those topics. So while yes, I was picking it up here and there on media, things I was seeing, things I was reading, different classes I was taking, it didn't cross my mind as being something that people I knew identified as, or, you know, were struggling with trying to figure out, or it just wasn't something that people I knew were. And again, at the time, I wasn't putting a lot of concerted effort into this. This is sort of my conjecture and hindsight and trying to figure out where my head was at. I did go on a few dates. I had one relationship with a guy I went to school with. And when I was in that relationship, looking back, I knew it wasn't going to work. I wasn't really attracted to him. He was a great friend, and I kind of wish we had just kept it like that, because our whole relationship changed after the breakup, which is, it's part of living. You break up with people and sometimes it doesn't go great. But particularly after that breakup, I was starting to think about, he was a really good match for me on paper. Why didn't it work? And as college came to a close and I traveled for a year, again, meeting more people, starting to meet more people who were LGBTQI+, realizing they existed in the real world and they weren't this like Hollywood construct, which it sounds so ridiculous to say that, but honestly in my life experience that was kind of what it was. I started to realize like, oh, this is a thing. This is a thing people are, and it's fine, and they're living their life and it's fine. And I think around that point I started sort of questioning like, well, am I gay? Do I like women? And then like thinking back, I didn't remember ever having specific crushes on my friends or, women growing up. And again, I think a part of that was my brain had compartmentalized them as friends. They were my friends. Why would I be attracted to them? And sort of moving, coming back from Australia, getting a job, going to grad school, really starting to live an adult life. And again, being exposed to even more people, not a lot, but here and there, one or two, who were, lesbian, gay, transgender, whatever it was, and shared that experience, and me seeing them live a happy, fulfilled life just sort of solidified it like, oh, if this is what I am, who I am, that's fine. And it was really in grad school that I started kind of digging in and thinking that, okay, yeah, now that I'm being a little bit more honest with myself, I do think, at the time I was thinking, well, maybe I'm bisexual because I do find some men attractive. And, as the years went on, I started realizing a big part of that was just, it was the societal norm. I was a woman. I should find males attractive. And as I really dug down and did some soul searching, realizing that I can appreciate how men can be attractive, but I'm not attracted to them. And it was really, 2011, 2012, after I went to Australia for a year again, that I started realizing like, oh, okay, this is who I am. And then sort of next part of my struggle was, I didn't necessarily want that to be my entire identity. In the way that I saw it, I felt for me, labels were restrictive. They sort of gave a way for other people to not necessarily write off everything about you, but all of a sudden, the word gay or lesbian, I was worried would become my whole identity for a lot of people. And I'm more than that. Everybody I know is more than just one thing, whatever that one thing is. And so then my fear was, do I really want to live a life that, yes, would make me happy, but would also be limiting in the eyes of other people? And again, as I'm maturing, getting older, experiencing life, I'm realizing, screw the other people. I've never really cared what other people thought about anything else that I did. Why would I let this one thing, or fear about this one thing, how other people will react? Why will I let that dictate what I do with my life? I deserve to be happy. I want to be happy. Okay. So again, this is probably late 2011, early 2012. I'm accepting now. I am in some way under the LGBTQIA rainbow, and I'm not going to worry about a label because I don't want to. I can be under that umbrella. I don't need to know specifically where I fall to be happy. Other people are just going to have to deal with it. And then at that point, it's becoming clear that, yeah, people, you know, I don't owe people anything, but the people who are close to me and who love me probably not necessarily deserve to know ahead of time, but at some point I'm going to need to tell them, or it's going to become apparent. And again, mental struggle went back and forth. For me, is it right to come out? And I decided, for me, it was not. And my rationale was, my siblings, my cousins, aunts, uncles, friends, everybody I knew who was straight didn't have to sit all their loved ones down and say, you know, mom, dad, you know, brother, sister, whoever, I'm straight. I'm gonna date, you know, if it was a woman, a man, if it was a man, a woman. They didn't have to do that. I didn't felt like, for me, this is where it becomes important, for me, I didn't feel like I needed to do that. I was fairly confident that my family, particularly my immediate and extended close family, was gonna be accepting and, you know, they'd still love me. I wasn't worried about being disowned. Did I think there'd be some bumps on the road? Sure. I was more worried about certain friends that I had, really close long-term friendships, and just some things that they had expressed, and I was a little more worried about that. But like I said, I didn't feel like I needed to sit everybody down and come out, so I didn't. The way it played out, and this is getting into the how of my coming out story, was, you know, I talked to women here and there. Nothing was long-term. I'm an introvert. I'm not interested, and never was interested in dating someone repeatedly when I felt like it wasn't going to work out. I have close friends, I have people in my life who love me, and I'm happy with the number that it's at. I don't need to seek out more for me. And none of that worked long term, so I didn't really tell very many people. Now I moved to Texas and pretty quickly meet Lauda, realized very quickly I'm serious about her, and I'm back to it. How do I break the news to the people I love without having to go out of my way and sit them down and like explain this whole long thing that for me I felt like I should not have to do, and for me, again, I didn't have an interest in doing. And the way that it worked out was, without really even thinking about it, we on Facebook like set the setting that we were dating each other. So without thinking about it, we did that. But then obviously anybody I'm Facebook friends with can now see this notification that I'm with somebody named Lauda, who's obviously a woman. And for me, that was great. Like, done. Everybody that I'm close with had Facebook and was on Facebook. There was some blowback. Not everybody loved the way I went about doing it, but I mean, I understand their point. I get how it's a valid position from their point of view, but in my mind, for me, this was how it worked best for me. And then as far as introducing Lauda to the family, taking her home, I'd never brought anybody in a significant other relationship home, ever. And very quickly became apparent my brother was getting married, I was going home for the wedding, and about the time I was starting to think about whether or not I wanted to take a +1, because this isn't too far into our relationship, only maybe like 5 months, my now sister-in-law texted and said, you know, hey, if you want to bring Lauda as your +1, my brother and her were fine with that. They were totally in support of it. She just wanted to let me know. Obviously she wasn't going to push me to do it. She just wanted me to know that they were fine with it. And after conversation, that's what we did. I took Lauda home for the wedding. She met my entire family, and the rest is really history. I mean, as somebody who is married to another woman, I'm sort of chronically and constantly coming out every time I meet new people or get a different job. Obviously I wear a wedding ring. People ask, oh, you're married. And then from there, yes, yeah, my wife's name is Lauda. And that's usually the extent of me coming out. Yeah, I mean, it's not a super interesting story, I don't think, but I do think it's important to share stories where it isn't this end-all be-all. Did I lose some friendships over coming out? Yeah. Is my family accepting towards me? Definitely. I'm very blessed to be in a family who big on unconditional love. Not everybody has that. It makes me so sad, but for me, I just couldn't be more grateful to have that. Loudest coming out story is a little bit different. It's going to be up to her as to whether or not she wants to share that. And if anybody has questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram. People do that all the time. I'm happy to answer questions. If it's too personal or something I'm not going to talk about, I'm comfortable saying that, so don't worry that she'll offend me. But yeah, that is the how and the why of my coming out story. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Yeah, if you know somebody that you think needs some support in coming out or coming to grips, feel free to share the video or share my, Instagram, whatever it is. I'm here to help if I can. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye!